All right, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube page. If you enjoy this video or my other videos, please subscribe to the page, click like, and do all of the things. Today, I'm going to talk about reactions to Donald Trump's January 6th pardons. I'm recording this about 7 p.m. West Coast time on Thursday, January 23rd. So we've had a couple of days to kind of let the dust settle, and the reactions are pretty much exactly as you would expect them to be. To recap, Donald Trump issued almost 1,600 full and unconditional pardons on Monday night to all of the January 6th defendants and anyone who could become a January 6th defendant, except for 14 people. The 14 people who got their sentences commuted, meaning their criminal charges remain, they just don't have to serve the rest of their prison time. Those 14 people were members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, who received by far the longest sentences involved in this process. I think Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, got 22 years. Stuart Rhodes, leader of the Oath Keepers, got 18 years. Their sentences were commuted because they were convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States government. And I was talking to a good friend of mine today who was completely unsurprised by this. I was shocked that he pardoned literally everybody except for the 14 people whose sentences he commuted. It includes all kinds of people who were violent, beat the shit out of police officers, permanently injured police officers. Fortunately, the Fraternal Order of Police, who had endorsed Donald Trump before leading up to the 2024 election, they withdrew their endorsement of him today. Okay. And denounced these pardons. It's the first time they've actually stood up for their members who were at the Capitol, the officers who were at the Capitol on January 6th. But whatever. I mean, but it's been a hell of a week, man. It's been a hell of a week. It's been very challenging to manage my PTSD through this. It's like it's like every time I open my phone, it's like getting kicked in the balls. I mean, it's been a bit of a week. So I took yesterday and most of today off from TikTok. I've been recording some YouTube content. Because that, I can just record it and then go do something else. There's no scrolling. I'm not looking at any comments. I'm not dealing with any MAGA chuds or anything like that. So, but the breadth and the scope of these pardons, to me, was just stunning. It was just stunning. Fortunately, almost 60% of Americans disapprove of these pardons, according to recent polling. So that's somewhat heartening. But he said he was going to do it. All through the campaign, he said he was going to do it. Through the campaign, he said he was going to pardon the peaceful January 6th protesters. But it was either Politico or Axios that reported that by the time he got to the White House Monday evening after being inaugurated and going through all these different ceremonial things, he said to one of his staff members, "Fuck it, release them all." Literally, that's what he said, word for word. "Fuck it, release them all." And the effect of these pardons was he ordered that all of these people who were still being held in the DC jail awaiting trial or sentencing be released immediately. And all J6 defendants who were serving time in prison be released immediately. And they were all released Monday night. And it's fucking horrific. Sorry. I'm checking a text message from my brother about some technical issues. But so there are still a ton of these cases making their way through the DC circuit courts, the district courts. and the trial court level. And one of the judges who has overseen many of those cases and several of these trials is Judge Tanya Chutkin, who oversaw Donald Trump's January 6th case, where he was indicted on 4 felony counts for trying to overturn the 2020 election and take advantage of the violence at the Capitol on January 6th. She had very harsh words, and I think it was in a filing where she was basically dismissing one of the pending cases in light of the pardons. She wrote, "No pardon can change the tragic truth of what happened on January 6, 2021. She wrote in a statement dismissing one of the cases. On that day, a mob professing support for then President Donald Trump violently attacked the Capitol. The dismissal of this case," speaking about the case that she was dismissing, "cannot undo the rampage that left multiple people dead, injured more than 140 police officers, and inflicted millions of dollars in damage. It cannot diminish the heroism of law enforcement who struggled, facing serious injury and even death, to control the mob that overwhelmed them. It cannot whitewash the blood, feces, and terror that the mob left in its wake. It cannot repair the jagged breach in America's sacred tradition of peacefully transitioning power." And Judge Chutkin is a good writer. And I appreciate her actually doing that in writing. She didn't have to. Another U.S. District Judge in D.C., Judge Colleen Collar-Catelli, a Bill Clinton appointee, made similar remarks. Dismissal of charges, pardons of convictions, and commutations of sentences will not change the truth of what happened on January 6th, 2021. What occurred that day is preserved for the future through thousands of contemporaneous videos, trial transcripts, jury verdicts, and judicial opinions, analyzing and recounting the evidence through a neutral lens. Those records are immutable and represent the truth, no matter how the events of January 6th are described by those charged or their allies. She also oversaw many of these cases, and she was the trial judge for Peter Navarro, former current White House economic advisor. He was an economic advisor for Trump in his first term, who went to trial for 4 months for ignoring a subpoena from the January 6th committee. Donald Trump is considering inviting some of the pardoned January 6th insurrectionists to the White House, probably for cold McDonald's food. The White House and Trump are in active discussions about inviting some of these fucking assholes, these traitorous losers, to the White House. On Tuesday, Trump suggested that there could be a place in American politics for the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, extremist groups whose leaders were convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States, per the Associated Press. Democrats in Congress over the last couple of days have been having a field day with this, rightfully so. Jamie Raskin lost it on Jim Jordan in a committee hearing the other day. Jim Jordan was railing on the Biden administration for allowing illegal immigrants into the country. Raskin responded by saying, "The chairman began by saying, the point here is to restore the rule of law. Can you even pretend to do that if you stand by and support Donald Trump, who on day one, as the chairman of the committee just said, day one of his presidency pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists, including hundreds of people who violently assaulted and attacked police officers. The family of Officer Brian Sicknick, who died the day after January 6th, is absolutely devastated and demolished by what's happened. And now you have the temerity to come forward and say that this is about public safety, immigration." Amazing. He noted that Trump just released 1,500 violent criminals out onto the streets in the United States. Jim McGovern in the House, he was on the floor of the House during a debate session yesterday. He clashed with Chip Roy from Texas and demanded that enforcement of federal law and immigration after President. Blah, 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 blah. He said Chip Roy was arguing in favor of the passage of the Laken-Riley Act because Republicans don't give a shit about women who are murdered in this country unless they are white women who are murdered by an undocumented immigrant. That's what the Laken-Riley Act is. Laken-Riley's murder was horrific and tragic, and what she endured was something that no one should ever have to endure. But Republicans at the congressional level are passing this law because she was murdered by an undocumented immigrant. If she was murdered by a boyfriend or a partner or a husband who was a white United States citizen, this legislation would never have come into being, and that's a fact. Congressman McGovern responded to some things that Chip Roy said. You have a lot of nerve to come down here and talk to us about law and order when the gentleman who just spoke was at a DC jail celebrating the release of the people who attacked and beat cops here in this Capitol and almost killed them. Yeah, Chip Roy was at the jail. Some died as a result of their injuries, and I know my Republican friends don't want to defend these parties because what the president did was indefensible. He couldn't release these people who attacked our police officers fast enough. How about you stand with the officers who were beaten and bloody, protecting you, rather than stand by a reality TV wannabe dictator? I think that is very eloquently stated. Steve Bannon calls for a massive criminal investigation of the judges and prosecutors in the January 6th cases. He was being interviewed by a self-styled MAGA reporter, Julie Kelly, and Bannon noted that mainstream media was melting down after Trump's pardons. Julie Kelly said, "My sources are telling me, Steve, that the judges in Washington are responsible for slow walking the release of the defendants in the DC courthouse. These are judges who have expressed open contempt for Donald Trump in their courtrooms, in their court filings. They consider to be January 6th an act of domestic terrorism." It was. Bannon says J6, obviously, President Trump is very dear to his heart, is also central to, let me rephrase this. January 6th is obviously very near and dear to President Trump's heart, also central to his mission because it gets back to the Fedsurrection that the FBI was behind January 6th. It gets back to the stolen 2020 election. It wasn't stolen. And we're not going to let that go. You really should, because it wasn't stolen, Steve. It's deeper than J6 guys. The J6 guys are symbolic of the corruption in our system. That goes all the way back to Nixon, yada, yada, yada. Who gives a shit what Steve Bannon has to say? There was one woman, MAGA Granny, who turned down Trump's pardon, saying we were wrong, and slammed Trump's insult to the police. Pamela Hemphill, who was part of an anti-government group led by Ammon Bundy. Boy, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, Google Ammon Bundy, AMMONBUNDY. That dude is a piece of work. Pamela Hemphill said, "I fully regret everything I said and did at the Capitol. We were wrong that day. Accepting a pardon would only insult the Capitol police officers, rule of law, and of course, our nation. I pleaded guilty because I was guilty, and accepting a pardon would also serve to contribute to their gaslighting and false narrative." Good for Pamela Hemphill. Lots of Donald Trump supporters Trump voters, I should say, do not support these pardons. NPR went out and interviewed some of them. One woman named Deborah Elmore said, "I think it's horrifying. It's against everything that this country is supposed to represent. It's against law and order. These people were found guilty of their crimes." My favorite reaction, I think, has to be DC Metropolitan Police Officer Michael Fanon. He was dragged from the tunnel. You remember the tunnel on January 6th? He was dragged from the tunnel by insurrectionists, shoved and pulled into the crowd. They tried to take his handgun from him. He heard somebody say, take his gun, kill him with his own gun. One guy shoved a taser in his neck so many times that he had a mild heart attack. He thought he was going to die. And Donald Trump pardoned all of the men who did that to him. And he was appearing on CNN with anchor Pamela Brown on Tuesday or Wednesday. And she played a clip for him of Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Proud Boys, the guy with the eye, or the Oath Keepers, the guy with the eye patch, who told the press he had no regrets from the January 6th riot, claiming that he was there to protect Trump supporters from Antifa and secure permitted events on Capitol grounds. When Pamela Brown said, Officer Fanon, do you have any response to that? He said, yeah, go fuck yourself, Stuart. You're a liar. And they didn't bleep him. So good for CNN on that. But he went on to say the following. He said, I've never stopped getting threats. I mean, my family, the threats have never stopped. I didn't even make it through my congressional testimony during the select committee before receiving my first threat. In recent months, my mother has had her home swatted. She's a 76-year-old woman who lives alone. She has had bricks thrown at her house in the middle of the night. And just a few months ago, she was out raking leaves in her front yard when an individual pulled up in a truck and threw a bag of shit at her. All because her son had the courage to testify about his experience on January 6th as a police officer in this country. I hate these people. I hate them. Speaker Mike Johnson, not to be outdone, while railing on the pardons that Joe Biden issued on his way out the door, pardoning his family members and members of the January 6th committee, and vowing to look into them. The pardon power is absolute. There's nothing that Congress can do to undo them. It's also a separation of powers issue. Speaking of Donald Trump's pardons, and Manu Raju from CNN said, if those rioters come back to the Capitol, will you welcome them back here? Mike Johnson, in his very serious Christian voice, said, everybody can describe this however they want. The president has the pardon and commutation authority. It's his decision. And I think what was made clear all along is that peaceful protests and people who engage in them should never be punished. Okay? And speaking about groups like Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, Speaker Johnson went on to say, we believe in redemption. We believe in second chances. If you could, you would argue that those people didn't pay a heavy penalty after being incarcerated, and all of that is up to you, but the president's made a decision, we move forward. There are better days ahead of us. That's what we're excited about. We're not looking backwards, we're looking forwards, unless we're looking backwards at Joe Biden's pardons. CNN's Jim Acosta, he had Tennessee Republican Tim Burchett on. And man, if you want to see a special kind of asshole, look up Tim Burchett, Burchett. He is a hardcore evangelical Christian Republican, and almost every single thing he does and says is inconsistent with that description of being an evangelical Christian, an actual Christian. He basically refused to say that Trump's pardons were wrong. On live TV. I don't even know why guys like that go on CNN anymore, to be honest with you. I certainly don't know why they go on with Jim Acosta, because he's just going to pick them apart. It's amazing. That one. So how are the House Republicans responding to all of this? They're establishing a second January 6th committee to get to the real truth about what happened on January 6th. Yeah. So that's going to be fucking stupid. And then I mentioned in one of my other videos today, there are all kinds of House Republicans who have been contacting Speaker Johnson's office saying, hey, if this new committee gets up and running, you can't subpoena Cassidy Hutchinson, the star witness from the actual January 6th committee. You can't subpoena Cassidy Hutchinson to testify during this second January 6th committee hearings because she is in possession of a whole cache of text messages from currently serving House Republicans who texted her very sexually explicit text messages and were trying to have sex with her. And they did that via text message, and Cassidy Hutchinson still has all of those text messages. God, who is more perverted in the United States of America in 2025 than Republican men? They're just perverts. They're fucking perverts. Every single one of them. It's amazing. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my page, click like on the video, leave a comment, even if it's snotty and misspelled and you don't really quite yet have a handle on the differences between there, and there. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys soon. Have a safe week.